and to try to bring community support to public education, I think is really critical. We at least also have a very significant sort of quasi-judicial role as members of the Board of Education. So all appeals about transfers, discipline, employment practices, which in a county as big as ours is significant, that's a piece of the board work. And actually I would say my legal training has been really helpful in preparing me for that.
I think that all the answers that have been given are right on the button. I just add a few things. I think that you have to have a real sense of ethics and integrity, because if you don't, then it's going to be, as was said, extremely ad hoc and very subjective to the point where you lose your credibility very quickly. The other thing is, I think it's very easy, and our society tends, especially with this cycle type of society, to identify a problem. It's a little bit more difficult to identify the issues that generate the problem. And then it's extremely difficult to list all the real solutions to those issues and the overriding problem. I think lawyers are trained to do that. I think if you just think back the way we've been educated, and then our experiences in our practices, and then we approach things in life. There's nothing worse than getting involved in a discussion with your spouse and they say, you don't listen, you can't understand, and you don't think the same way I do. And you realize that's true, and you think you're bringing something to the table. The fact is, what we try and do is look at every possible, conceivable part of the problem, the issues, and then how you solve the problem. By way of solutions. I think that's very good. I think that's how you get buy-in. It's not how you win an argument with your spouse ever, but it's how you get buy-in with a community. Because at a certain point, you've got to bleed it out. At a certain point, you've got to hear everybody's point of view, and then you've got to come up with a solution to the problem. We right now have a lot of people walking around talking about the problems, and they don't really want to talk about the solutions on how you get it done. I think lawyers understand the bottom line is, how do you resolve the problem? So I think that's what we bring, which is very important.
A few of you have mentioned that you have kept your private practice while serving on a school board or running for a school board. Can you tell us how you balance that, and I'll use that term loosely, or how you handle that?
That is a constant challenge. And I guess to some extent for me particularly, because I serve on both the state board and on my local board, there is really not a day that goes by when I don't get up in the morning and as I'm preparing to leave for work and while I'm going to work, decide how I'm going to delegate the hours I have in that day and determine which portion I'm going to be able to dedicate to my legal practice, and which portion I'm going to feel obliged to dedicate to the various school-related issues that I'm involved in. I have state board, we call it the Board of Regents in Rhode Island. I have state meetings, State Board of Regents meetings officially twice a month, and of course that also expands beyond that. So you just have to be very, very well organized in spending your time and in organizing your day. For the most part, I'm made fun of because I always carry two briefcases. One has my law stuff in it, the other one has my education stuff in it, and I really need three because my local board could easily take up one briefcase and the state board could take up a third. But I do feel that, again, it's really important work. And the thing that I'm fearful of, and this is not necessarily my touting my own contributions as much as it's touting my own passion for this, I'm really afraid that if I'm not there, that someone who is not as passionate as I am about delivering quality instruction to all kids might be there, and I would be concerned that it might not get done. And no, obviously, everyone's expendable, but I've always admired those who have the passion to do this and willing to make the sacrifices. And as I think I indicated earlier, my partners often chide me about this. And Scott's point about it not being lucrative needs to be understood in two ways. I get $1,000 a year for being on the local school board. I get $0 for being on the state school board. And I can tell you, because of those two obligations, that I'm very visible and the target of a lot of solicitations for contributions by education and other related charitable institutions. So it takes some time away, but again, it's a very satisfying and gratifying opportunity that I would encourage everyone to at least take a whack at.
Mr. Lane?
Well, just to be very brief on this, it seems to me if you want to be a school committee member, I wouldn't suggest that you run for mayor to do it. Figuring I can win that by being an official. I was mayor. My law practice stayed open. We put up a firewall as far as any conflicts. That probably cost us some business along the way. That we had to tell some clients, fairly large clients, that we could no longer represent them. It eschewed new business from people that we normally would get. But it was, as I said, it was like going into the Peace Corps. The fact is that it's something. If you believe in your life that you'd like to try and, you said, so what do you want to do in your life? Whether you ask a kid or an adult, so I'd like to make a change, I'd like to make a difference, whatever. You can volunteer at your church, at the school. You can be involved in your community in a crime watch program, whatever it might be. You can help feed people or care for the elderly. Or you can take something and say, I'd like to try and really make a big difference by running for office, by being a candidate. You could also support someone and say, I feel great, I supported any one of my colleagues here, and every once in a while I'll pick up the phone and have some input in an educated, appropriate way. But I did 24/7. I made a campaign promise when I was running. The other side said, he's going to be part-time mayor. And I said, look, here's what I'm going to promise everyone. I said three things. I'm not a genius. Don't vote for me if you don't want to help. And I am going to commit to you right now that I will spend 1 hour a day at my law office. So if any of those three are a problem for you, then don't vote for me. No hard feelings. Don't think twice. And what happened was I proved I wasn't a genius every day. I absolutely asked everybody in the city to help, every single person. And the other thing was I broke the campaign promise. If I got to the law office once every other week for an hour, once a month for an hour, I was doing pretty well. I had a bunch of people who believed in what I was doing at my law office that continued to practice law. I didn't run for a fourth term. I think if I had run, I don't know there would have been any opposition. But I wanted to get in hard and then get out. And I announced before I ran for my third time that I wasn't running for a fourth time. So everybody get ready, come step forward, let's see some great mayoral candidates. I don't know whether that happened or not, and it's too early to tell. We have a new mayor, and God bless him, and I hope he does a good job. But the fact of the matter is, I went back to my law practice. I walked out of City Hall January 2nd of 2012, walked back into my law office after 2,200 days, rather, felt like years, days. And my practice has begun to pick up again. But I can tell you now that I didn't walk in and all of a sudden the phone started ringing. The people who kept calling me were asking for contributions or asking me as if I was a constituent service representative. So building my practice up now is going to be something. I'm working on it. It's going okay. But it's not, if you're looking to build a practice, you don't want to build it by running for public office. That's an old model that's now dead. You need to understand that you run for office, there is going to be a sacrifice. You can still make a living, you'll do great. But if you got to do it for the right reasons. You have to believe in bringing about whatever reform or change you're trying to do. Otherwise, it's not going to work out the way you hope. Anyone who thinks they're going to make money off of it, hopefully, is going to end up in jail. And anyone who thinks that it's going to make them more popular should sit down and look at what it's like to be in public life. You know, you have to be willing to make that sacrifice.
Especially in this economy, it's especially difficult.
I'll just have one more question, then we'll open it up to the audience if you will have questions. You know, we're at a critical point in our public education system. We have questions of privatization of our public schools, influx of charter schools coming into our states. How do you stay connected to your constituents to bring these issues to them and get their opinions on them? Start with Shirley.
You know, it's a really important question, and I think, you know, in a county as big as ours, community engagement is a struggle. One thing about the school board meetings, I think as was mentioned, you know, our meetings are televised, our meetings are open, you know, we're very careful to have public hearings around all policy decisions, around all boundary decisions. So when decisions begin to touch people in their neighborhoods, we try to make sure that we have clearly defined forums so that we can solicit input before we make the final decision that we have to then stand up for and own. And we're very conscious of that. But I will say, it is that fine line between wanting to be very clear about where the problems still are, but you need to speak to the success stories because so much of the national attention points out flaws. So, you know, while sometimes, I would say when I was first elected, when I ran, I thought, you know, we always are just hearing the happy talk from our school board. You know, they're always just publicizing, you know, the wonderful news, the success stories. You have to be able to speak truth to power and talk about what's not working. I will say now, having sat in the chair for 5 years, that is still true, but I understand politically the need to also take those moments to celebrate the success because people need to have faith in their public school systems. They need to know the teachers we're hiring and offering professional development to, they are really amazing teachers, and they are making a huge difference. And when we say, you know, we're not going to make any excuses, we are going to have the same obligation toward a student who walks in not speaking English as a first language, growing up in poverty, we have given our teachers the resources and the ability to do that. So when we have schools that beat the odds, we celebrate them so the community will know this is a worthwhile investment. In tough economic times, communities need to understand that there is a positive return on investment from their public schools. So we are very conscious of telling the good news, even while we work on some of the more intractable problems.
Suzanne?
Yeah, that's probably one of the most difficult things about school systems and public school is that, I know in Arlington, I'm sure it's similar, you can't hire a public relations person to talk about your school system. So you need to get the word out of the good things, and also in many communities, probably only 25%, maybe less, of the citizens actually have connection with the public schools, that have children in the public schools. And also in Massachusetts, we have something called Proposition 2.5, where your property taxes, you know, our Board of Selectmen can't just raise our property taxes to provide for public schools. It has to be, if we want to have our property taxes increase, the town has to vote on that. And much of the budget goes to funding public schools. So you have to convince the other 75% who may not have any connection with the public schools that the public schools are serving the town well, serving the students well, and that they get, even though they don't have a child in the public schools, that they get some kind of benefit from having a strong public school. And that's a really difficult connection to make in some cases. So we try to have a lot of public hearings about what is happening. When any big change has to happen in the school, like something that's happening currently in Arlington is redistricting school districts within this town, and that is like a lightning rod for superintendents. It's really, really emotional.